Hey everyone and welcome. Let's talk a bit about ARK Ascended. So this just came out a couple of days ago and I've so far racked up about 50 hours, and trust me, it would be a lot more, but it released at a really bad time for me, so life has been busy. I wish I could play it more. And I want to talk a little bit about just how I felt with ARK Ascended so far, because I understand that there are a lot of people who are understandably very skeptical, very hesitant to buy it. Some people who think it's just a bit of a hashed out reskin. A lot of people who are very justifiably angry about the whole server situation. I'm normally someone who avoids drama, but even I have to agree the situation was quite dire, though thankfully since improving. And thus, I just wanted to share a bit about how I feel about the game so far. I'm not a critic, but I am someone who, you know, if I enjoy a game, I enjoy a game, and I'd like to share why I enjoyed a game. And if I feel like a game is just too tedious or too unstable or whatever, I'll say it. So the quick thing I want to address, because I know it's a big thing for a lot of people, is of course the stability. The stability is really bizarre because it seems like that there's just no consistency regarding like people's specs, their installations, their drivers, etc. Me, for example, I've been following a few optimization videos, and I actually find I get better performance with higher graphics on full epic than I do with lower graphics. When I try the optimization options for lower graphics, I lose frame rates. It's the weirdest thing. I have two friends where they have more or less the exact same specifications on their computers, and yet while one is able to run the game perfectly fine, the other crashes constantly and can't load in. It's really odd, and that's obviously a big issue. Wildcard have been rapidly putting out updates and patches for optimizations which have made big differences, or for crashes, both server and client side, and it's good to see that they are actively working on it, and I do mean actively working on it. We've had several patches since the launch only a couple of days ago now, which is more than you could say for some games and developers. I know, I'm not going to say they're perfect, but it does seem like they are genuinely trying, and again the patches have been making differences. But there is still more to come, and they are actively working on that more to come. So obviously that's not very good for the people that can't play right now, but it's good to see that they can soon. Though I understand the higher GPU requirements due to Unreal Engine 5, and the increased slot count, and therefore the increased base price for Nitrado servers was another major point of contention due to the higher memory requirement. In other words, not even Nitrado could run ARK Ascended, so that was like another big thing. But these are all things that, to my understanding, are being improved. Now, with the obvious elephant in the room addressed, let's talk about those graphics! I know, graphics are a little bit cheesy, but it's the first thing you're going to see. And they absolutely blew me away. As the major gameplay trailer date for Ascended was approaching, I was getting really hyped, but I was one of the few people who were very optimistic about Ascended. I don't know why, I just had a good feeling. I think it's because I already love Survival Evolved, so Ascended surely couldn't be worse. Thankfully it's not, it's a lot better. So I was already optimistic, but even then, when I finally saw the gameplay trailer and I finally tucked myself into the game, it has blown my best expectations. Which again, I'm just someone who enjoys playing a game, so I'm not some intense critic, I just really enjoy it. The graphics are really stunning, there's so much atmosphere, the obelisks feel incredibly omnipotent and empowering, especially during the night time, they light up the entire sky if you build near them. It's no wonder Raya, the Egyptian character from Scorched Earth, it's no wonder she revered the obelisks as gods, because they do have that presence, that feeling. She made an entire religion out of them, whereas meanwhile, me and my tribe are built right next to one because we just love the way it lights up the night sky. Speaking of the night, the new lighting engine is fantastic, and I've never, well, not never, I have very rarely felt the need to gamma up, but that's usually when I'm in dense, thick forest, and I'm talking really dense, thick forest. Otherwise, the general nighttime is beautiful and is visible. That's the important thing, it's visible. That was one thing I couldn't stand in Survival Evolved, was how the nights were just voids and you had to gamma up to 4, even 5 sometimes, but no, it is better. It is a lot better in Ascended. The daytimes are beautiful, the light shines and the god rays are absolutely stunning, not really a thing I normally care about, but when again you're walking through a forest, like even just a bit of trees and brush, when the light dapples through the leaves, it just feels really immersive. The days feel warm, the nights and shadows feel cold, and it's just a really cool feeling. There's clouds in the atmosphere, which again really adds to the overall vibe, the mist. The grass and foliage is really thick and dense. You can quite easily lose yourself or lose like corpses of dinosaurs. I know I've lost a fair few Dilla corpses just in tall grass. However, if that is a problem for you, there are commands to remove it entirely. So if it's like laggy or too obstructive, you can fix that, that's fine. I like it personally because it just feels kind of cool just being in this giant wild world. Giant, that's another thing. I don't know what they did to the camera, but everything feels grander. Everything feels massive. The dinosaurs feel bigger. The island feels truly huge, and maybe that's because I'm doing a Zero Flyers playthrough, but even like the little bit of ocean between Kano Island and the nearby mainland, that just felt larger to traverse through. Even the caves as well feel really big. Beautiful lighting, everything's got that theme of being familiar yet foreign, to the point where a bunch of us tried to look up a word for this. We tried to look it up in ChatGPT as well, and turns out, to our knowledge, no such word exists for something that feels both familiar and unfamiliar at the same time. But that is Ascended's island in a nutshell. You know where everything is, and yet when you get there, you can feel like the general layout, and you'll recognize certain key areas, and yet it still just looks so new. Another thing about the terrain as well is the oceans. Oh my god, the oceans, the lakes, the rivers, everything looks beautiful from underwater. It really is amazing. It's night and day. It's so different. The water physics as well just feels so alive. Now, I've not actually done any ocean content yet, but I can at least verify that jellyfish and megalodon spawns are a lot lower, and we run a double spawn server, so the jellyfish and megalodons are a lot less, which means you can cross the oceans fairly safely on foot. The oceans are also just so much deeper. They're clearer to see, but they are so deeper, and it makes me so excited to encounter Moses and Tusos, which I hope to be doing very, very soon. It really is a miracle, and I don't know how they've done it, but they've actually made the ocean feel better, even on good old the island. There's so much to discover. There's so many little nooks and crannies. The land is really bumpy, especially the mountains and the volcano. They're so high, they're so difficult to traverse on foot. The map really does just feel wild and rich. Another thing that feels really wild are the dinosaurs. So, the behaviour, the AI of the dinosaurs, won't lie, it's not 100% perfect, but it's really interesting and really fun to play with. Tames do indeed path better, though sometimes they will over-calculate and overcompensate and go like some wild routes to get to you, but for the most part, they don't get stuck anymore. That's the important thing, they don't get stuck. For wild dinosaurs, I find that I like to think of myself as someone who's fairly good at recognizing the patterns of survival evolved AI. And I find things like Rexes and Gigas really predictable creatures, and I know how to trap them and even knock them out on foot. Check my Let's Play series, I've done it all a couple of times. But in Ascended, even my most familiar creatures are acting so differently, and it's really interesting because it really just makes for a much more different experience. Everything's harder, it's more challenging, it's more unpredictable. Especially because creatures will no longer just walk into a trap, whether it's a gateway or a doorway trap or it's up a ramp and into a pitfall. It's a lot harder, it's a lot more trial and error. Things don't just blindly stumble into your structures anymore. They really do path around it and really take some finesse and finagling to get them to do what you want them to do. And even then, you might die so many times doing it. Another thing I've noticed is that carnivores have very interesting behaviours where I found that while I was riding a tamed carnivore and I had a Rex on follow, every other wild Rex I found 100% ignored my carno and was always fixated on my Rex, and that implied they were very territorial. It was really interesting. Even my Rex was quite far behind me on passive, not on follow. Any Rex, any wild Rex I came to attack, they'd ignore me. They'd go straight for my Rex. It was really, really interesting. So I do want to quickly address movement speed because I know that's a really big thing. If you haven't heard, you can't level movement speed on your player or your tames. It does feel like they rebalance movement speed on a lot of creatures. I know that, for example, I can happily outrun a Rex, I can happily outrun a Therizino, which you couldn't in Survival Evolved, I don't think. Obviously some creatures like Raptors and Baryonyxes are really fast. For the most part, I haven't really noticed the issue movement speed. I mean, sometimes, yeah, I'm like, oh god, I can't outrun this thing. And it can be a little bit problematic, but it's really not that bad in the grand scheme of things. I don't PvP, so maybe that's why. Though I do consider myself a bit of a risk taker in PvE, and again, I don't mind it, I just find it extra challenge. And bearing in mind, I'm doing a no flyers, only land playthrough, and even then, I still don't mind. It just means I get to enjoy the beautiful environment, keep an eye out for prospective tames even more. And a couple of more extra quick notes are things like how attacking is much more precise if you're on a tamed dino attacking another dino. Headshots do matter now depending on where you hit. Also, that things like raptors do seem to prioritize getting behind your dino, so you have to turn manually and attack them back, or otherwise they will just absolutely abuse you. Also, that so far in my experiences, carnivores don't flee or low damage per se, but they do seem to seek a quick target that they can kill and fully heal. I've had this happen even with alpha raptors, where I've had two attack me at the same time. One was separated off to a really far away dino that made no sense. It was a very unnatural change of behaviour. It would go to like a Phiomia, it would kill it, it'd come rushing back at me, fully replenished. Yes, alphas do heal. I've noticed the same behaviour in Rexes as well. When they get to low health, they'll turn around and find a quick bite. So it really feels like that carnivores are trying to be resourceful and to try and make the fight for you a lot harder to win. Anyway, that is all to say that the AI is really interesting and it's really, really fun to play with. Now, regarding the dinosaur TLCs, I know a lot of people are really disappointed by the lack of TLCs. I'm conflicted because on the one hand, Wildcard had the entire rest of the game. It's not like they just took this one thing and just said, lol, no. No, they had the entire rest of the game. And I could definitely understand the argument that, like, oh, why not just a couple? Because if they did a couple, then, you know, why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that? And it just would have turned into a very big messy situation. Although Wildcard had mentioned they're interested in the idea of doing a TLC votes, just like the creature submission votes, they might do TLC votes, so that's something to look forward to in the future. But then on the other hand, I'm still a little bit annoyed by the lack of TLCs, because while some creatures, like the moss chops, the lystro, the Extenoboa, Argentavis feathers, they look great in the new engine, they look really, really good. Other creatures like the Megatherium and the Quetzal, they do look very dated. It's quite disappointing they didn't try using the R Megatherium for the current Megatherium. I know it's reserved for Gen 2, but, you know, make another one. The current Megatherium just looks so bland in-game, and the Quetzal's an obvious outlier. I don't think anyone really likes how the Quetzal looks anymore. So it's unfortunate, but I understand, but at the same time, grrr. Thankfully, I can comfortably say that there are some mods that are really working on it, and the mods are really something to look forward to. Moving on, I want to talk a bit about the building. Now, we all know that building, oh god, building in ARK is a meme and a travesty. In Ascended, it is so much better. And thank goodness for it, because Orion Sun, the developer of Structures Plus, was employed and hired by Wildcard, and GG Fizz, one of the more popular ARK building YouTubers, was also part of the QA team, and they've all done such a fantastic job. So, building, snapping's better, control's better, you can much more finesse where you want structures to be placed, such as foundations. You can change the depth of them in the ground. There are no walls and windows and doorways, it's all just one homogenized structure that you can change the variance of when you build it, so that's less inventory bloat, less engram bloat. Now you just make a wall, and when you place it, you choose if it's a window or a doorway, or the different kinds of doorways. Same for the ceilings and roofs, same for the sloped walls and ramps, everything's got variants. Crop irrigation and electric generators no longer require wires or pipes, everything is just a AoE zone where if you put down a water intake, all crops within the area are just automatically irrigated, so that's again less bloat and just a much cleaner system. It does mean that you're very limited to only building near lakes unless you use a water tank, though it's nice that water tank's now relevant again, because I kind of felt they were a bit useless in Survival Evolved. Maybe an aberration due to the hidden condensation effect, but that was about it really. Whereas now they're actually useful as a water source away from rivers and lakes and such. A couple little extra things about buildings is that now structures like the smithy will automatically align with a wall, so no need to, you know, K-camber and really perfectly make it nice and straight. No more worrying about it poking through the back of the wall either, so it's obstructing through on the other side of the building, you've got to have to go back and undo it. No, they all now just sit against the wall and they align themselves for you. And there are settings to disable that, you really have a lot of control. Now also things like fuel timings are accounted for. If you put on a campfire, put some wood in there, it will tell you how long the wood will last for. Same for the generator, same for a fireplace or a refining forge. Again, just a massive improvement. And not to mention just the physical way the buildings look. Even thatch looks pretty. Buildings look so much better. The new textures are so clean. They're really lovely to mix and match. Wood and stone don't feel quite as obtuse together like they did in Survival Evolved. I did it stubbornly, but it was possible to make wood and stone look good together in Survival Evolved, but now in Ascended they always look good and it's just beautiful. It's clean, everything just looks interesting visually, and I think this might be the first game where I'll finally start doing some proper big building projects because I really enjoy the feel of it. My only downside about the building is the lack of a blueprint system like in Grounded, but it's okay because they did improve it a lot. Another major improvement is the whole map system. So on the one hand, I kind of miss the little paper map that you'd hold in your hand. But on the other hand, when you open up your inventory and select the map from your inventory screen, or you double tap M for map, it does bring up a much wider version that now allows you to add pinpoints everywhere, but actual tracking pinpoints. I've really utilised all the tracking systems from Gen 1 and Gen 2, and it looks so much better. The tracking's really in-depth because you can also track a whole manner of your tames, your players, locations out in the world where you can just land it in any coordinates you want. You can find coordinates easily on the fly, no more use of a GPS or a compass. It's all there and much simpler for you. It's very user-friendly as well, and it's just such a big improvement. So there are still a lot more improvements left for me to discover because, like I said, I'm still quite in the early mid-game myself because I am not rushing. I am really enjoying this and I'm taking my time. But a couple of things I have noticed is that if you have a shoulder pet and you hold R, you can access your shoulder pet's inventory without constantly throwing it on the floor. Also, that if you're holding a weapon like a crossbow and again you hold R, you can filter through the different ammo types, and that again, that's something I just learned this morning, and that's so cool. And it reminds me of Horizon, funnily enough, where you can quickly change ammo on the fly. I love that's a thing, and I think that's going to make the tech bow so good in the future. Because I would rather open a radio wheel and quickly select it, instead of filtering through every different option, or going into my inventory for different weapons and choosing the ammo and cocking it up. It's a bit... It kind of slows you down, but this new system is just much quicker, and I look forward to finding out more little features like this one, lots of quality of lives. Another is the option to right-click your torch and attach it to your belt, so that way you can have a constant light source with your hands being free. Another that I forgot to mention earlier is that if you break apart a foundation with walls attached to it up above, they're no longer supported. They won't break, they'll fall into your inventory as usable items yet again. But this is all to say that in general, I am thoroughly enjoying Ascended, and it's really exciting to know that now that I've bought Ascended, I already have all the DLCs queued up in the future. It's currently $45, and it is so exciting to know that I've got everything. I've got every story map up until Gen 2, I've got every community map up until Fjorda, everything's coming eventually. And if I've already had this much of an experience discovering the island all over again, I can't wait for the other maps. I think Aberration and Gen 1, appearance-wise, are probably going to be the ones I look forward to the most. Give me your thoughts, give me your feelings. If you feel you disagree, or anything you want to point out, or anything you want to just love and share, please do share. I'm really interested. It's been really cool just seeing everyone's thoughts and feelings about Ascended so far. It's been a bit of a controversial release, but I've been having fun. And I really hope that many of you are too, or if you're not able to play, I hope you can as soon as possible. So thank you so much, and I'll see you all next time. Cheers.